Thank you, Conor. Good morning, everyone, and welcome to our second webinar this week with the Dublin Cycling Campaign celebrating a virtual bike week this year. Unfortunately, we're not doing any of our usual stunts or activities, but we welcome you along, and we have a really good attendance registered today for this theme, Cities for People in a Pandemic. So we have two panelists today. We're going to let them speak, and then we're going to invite you to send messages via chat, which myself and Conor shall moderate, and then open up some questions and answers afterwards. So with no further ado, people are still entering the room, and we'll keep going though.
We might just wait a second before we start off. We might be going to start at 3 minutes past, so because we're up to a good number, but people are still joining in. Thanks, Conor.
Still trying to get in, fair enough.
Yeah.
And as Conor is saying, if people would like to, in chat, register their name or where they're coming from, it's just of interest to know who's tuning in today. So our panelists shall be, in a few minutes, Patricia Reidy, who's a team member of the Dublin City Council COVID Mobility Programme. And she's going to run us through what they have been doing and what successes and what objectives they have during this extraordinary few months we've seen this year. And we're also going to hear from Graeme McQueen, who's the head of communications with the Dublin Chamber of Commerce. And some of us are probably already familiar with hearing him on various channels and social media. But we look forward to hearing what's going on the ground in our city. As myself as a business owner, I just had to pivot and turn and chop and change so many times the last few months, and we don't know the time scale on this, so I can't imagine what it's like running something like Dublin City Council and trying to quickly adapt and evolve, and likewise with so many businesses with bricks and mortar in our city centre, and this has been just really challenging times. So we are continuing on this week. We have a couple of more webinars, one tomorrow morning, for example, and we'll announce them towards the end of this. And we might wait Conor a few more minutes. We still have people coming in.
We're kind of, I think we're good to go now. We're just on 4 minutes past now. So, yeah. If you want to introduce Patricia, yeah. Or you've kind of introduced her already, yeah.
Okay, so let's hear from Patricia Reidy, please, from Dublin City Council COVID Mobility Programme. Over to you, Patricia. Thank you.
Okay, thanks very much, and hello and good afternoon, everyone. I'd like to start my presentation by wishing you all a very happy Bike Week. It's our very first and hopefully our very last Bike Week in a pandemic. So I don't want to see you all here next year, right? We're meeting in real life. So my aim today is to give you an overview of Dublin City Council's COVID Mobility Programme, and to give you an insight into what's been keeping us quite busy since the COVID bomb went off basically in April of this year. So now I have, sorry. I need to go back.
So if you just use the back arrow, you're flying through them now, yeah.
For some reason it jumped
on there.
Oh yeah, that's
there. Good, yeah. So, yeah, okay.
Perfect.
Now.
So to kick off then, we'll just start with by reminding ourselves, I guess, really. So what was the impact of COVID-19 on mobility? So basically, COVID bomb went off in March, April, and the impact on transport, and you can see there the photograph of O'Connell Bridge, which is like a ghost town. So basically, bus, car, rail fell off a cliff. Numbers plummeted, usage plummeted. As the restrictions eased, those numbers did not come back. The public transport capacity was reduced to 1/5, and this is really to do with social distancing requirements. So the capacity in public transport greatly reduced, and a deficit then in mobility, in getting people in and around the city due to these capacity limitations on the public transport, and coupled with the prioritising of pedestrians at giving them more green and green time meant a reduction in car capacity as well. Now, there's two ways of looking at this, as with everything, I guess, in life. There's an opportunity here to say the additional capacity, the modal shift. Are people automatically going to basically climb in to their private cars, feel safe and be safe? Or is there an opportunity here to use the situation and basically persuade and cajole and coax people to maybe consider walking and cycling? Now, just as the pandemic kicked off, Dublin City Council and the NTA jointly published, in response to these mobility challenges, and really the challenge in one sentence is to optimise mobility whilst ensuring social distancing. So in May 2020, Dublin City Council, in collaboration with the NTA, we jointly published the Enabling the City to Return to Work, which is the interim mobility intervention programme for Dublin City. And this really is a framework, and it lays out a framework to optimise mobility whilst ensuring that social distancing. Now, there's a suite of measures outlined in the programme, and Dublin City Council have set up a dedicated COVID mobility team. And to be perfectly frank, we've been working flat out since May in delivering a suite of measures. Now, to go through just broadly some of the measures, and as I say, I have photos later on in the presentation to demonstrate some of these, but we're looking at areas like increased footpath widths, optimising signalling crossings to minimise pedestrians waiting at signals, looking at areas where we can conduct pedestrian trials, looking at cycling, looking at protected cycle facilities, contraflow and additional cycling parking throughout the city, filtered permeability trials. We've two of those ongoing, more about that later. Basically, the space around the city centre, looking at the minimising queuing, optimising space, looking at outdoor furniture. There's a whole suite of measures there, active travel and school mobility, but I'll go into a little bit more detail on each of those. That slide really is just to give you an idea of some of the broad suite of measures that we are looking at. So as part of the framework, we recognised that there was three main areas. There's the city centre, which is moving people safely in and around the city centre itself. There's the in and out, the radial routes into and out of the city itself, and also the urban villages. And we also recognise the interconnectivity, which is a very difficult word to say when you're online, between all three. So I'm going to start now with the city centre measures. And as you can see there in the slide, what we've identified, and the area in yellow there highlights it, is that that area is a public, transport and walking and cycling priority. So we have a suite of specific measures there, including wider footpaths, support for businesses for outdoor furniture, facilitating the delivery of goods, and really trying to look at this area and seeing how we can optimize it, almost boxing clever with deliveries really, looking at safer cycling facilities, providing additional space, particularly in busy bus stops, and accommodating a certain level of car use, because there will be always a cohort that it will not be feasible to have active travel as a mode. So we recognise that, and we've maintained access to the existing car parks. Coupled with that, we looked at the routes into and out of the city, and taking the November according counts, we identified by order of priority the areas, the routes into the city and out of the city that would have the top active modes, and they're all laid out there in the slide that you see in front of you. Now, what I would say, obviously, just to add that during the COVID pandemic, the actual numbers, we're not seeing these numbers in the morning and evening peak at the moment. I think our counts at the moment are showing that we're back to about 20% in terms of pedestrians going in and out at peak, and actually 30% in cycling. So the COVID pandemic, actually, many people, as you know, including many of you who are listening today, are probably working from home, and you're not back going in and out of the city. But just to start somewhere, we actually took the pre-COVID numbers of the November according count, and these are some of the routes that we've looked at actually to see where we can put in interventions. Now, many interventions have been implemented along these routes, and as I say, I'll show you some photographs of these as I go through the presentation. The other area that's very important to recognise is the urban villages. Now, particularly at the start of the pandemic, there was a 2-kilometre requirement, a restriction that you couldn't go further than 2 kilometres from your own home. And what we noticed during this time was that the urban villages themselves became extremely busy. The footpaths were busy, queuing was busy. So part and parcel of our programme is to look at these urban villages and see what measures can be implemented in the villages themselves, particularly in those initial few months, to create additional space. And what we looked at there was removal of some, where feasible, of car spaces and loading bays. A whole package of suite of measures, and I think actually at last count we've 20 plus of these footpath widening measures already implemented as part of the programme. But this photograph will give you an idea of a sample of one of these. And what we have identified in multiple locations is areas where there's very narrow footpaths that can be widened by our COVID mobility team in order to create additional space. And I really like these photographs because it shows you South Ann Street there before the COVID mobility intervention and afterwards. And really there you can see straight away there that footpath width, the additional footpath width that is being implemented, has actually created a wonderful opportunity for the local cafes and businesses to set up stall. And I'm sure many of you have been in during the pedestrian trials would have seen that worked so successfully, and the retailers 100% feedback was 100% positive, very positive initiative. And we have done this at numerous locations across the city. Just to give you another example, so the photograph in South Ann Street is footpath widening to create maybe space for outdoor furniture. And then we have many examples where we have looked at locations in the city centre that require additional space where there are pinch points for people perhaps queuing for buses. So here's an example of this. I think at least 3 of these have gone in College Green alone, whereby the pedestrians walking can walk on the inside and people can queue safely for their buses by these footpath build-outs. Another example on Parnell Street, another busy bus stop, so that's more footpath widening exercises carried out there. Now moving on to cycling, because I think you might be interested in cycling, perhaps. We talk a bit about cycling now. We focused on cycling, and there's a number of tools that we've used to increase facilities for cycling, namely contraflow cycling, protection, and cycle parking. Now, there's a photograph of the contraflow cycle lane that went in on Nassau Street, and very straightforward, very simple. You can see it's temporary in nature. We have a lot of the cycle protection measures that were carried out since May have been using the bollards. They've been proven very effective, and the feedback has been very positive from the cycling community. I believe that it has had the most positive traction on Twitter from the cycling community as well, so we're fairly happy with that. A lot done, more to do. We have at least 16 different interventions on cycle protection lanes installed so far. Another example there is on Lower Richmond Street. So if you were alert and awake during my initial slides, you would have recognized that route was actually the top route for walking and cycling pre-COVID. So I'm very pleased to say that most of that route, where feasible, has been, cycle protection measures has been installed. Another example then on Griffith Avenue, we've been carrying out a trial to roll out an extruded curb in terms of a protected cycle lane along this stretch. So over 550 meters of extruded curb has been installed. And you can see there, that's the finished product with the buff color on the cycle lane to delineate the cycle lane, to increase the safety of the cycle lane, and to separate the cycle lane from traffic. Feedback for that intervention also has been quite good. And what we're doing at the moment is we are under active consideration of further feasible and suitable locations. Finally, on cycle protection, I just want to show you the very latest installations that have gone in there on Harold's Cross Bridge, which is another very, very busy cycle route into the city. And last but not least, that wonderful shot of the interventions that we've installed on College Green itself, with the beautiful planters as well delineating the space. So amongst the other suite of measures that we've been implementing are some filtered permeability trials. And so simply put, a filtered permeability trial is more or less a cycle gate whereby vehicular traffic cannot pass through, but cyclists can, and obviously pedestrians can still use the footpath. So we have 2 trials currently ongoing with this. We have one in Grangegorman and one in Pigeon House Road. So there in front of you is a photograph of the installation in Grangegorman. Now this will be is a resounding success at the moment, but even more so in the future when the TUD students are back, because this area is actually where the over 20,000 students will be attending college going forward. So this is a fantastic trial to undertake, and we're currently reviewing feedback and receiving feedback on it. But I want to show you, I'll just show you a second photograph of the Pigeon House Road trial. This is the second filter permeability.
Just Patricia, just to let you know that that's 12 minutes, but keep going as you are.
Are you joking?
Yeah.
Oh my God.
I know.
I'll have to really
Time flies when we're having fun.
Whoops.
Yeah,
Okay,
keep going.
I'm going to keep going.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's the second trial on Pigeon House Road. I'll have to speed up, but I really want to show you this photograph of the Grangegorman. So the TUG students are not back, but this is what has happened since we have put in the filtered permeability trial at Grangegorman. A lot of the local schools, the cycling numbers have, you know, basically exploded, and you can see there in that photograph, they are school children cycling to school as a direct result of the filtered permeability trial that has gone in Grangegorman. And you will notice in that photograph that many of the children are actually cycling unaccompanied by a parent. I'm going to have to talk really quickly now. On the subject of schools, we have a very dedicated schools mobility program that we're currently rolling out. And this is very important because this is taking top priority at the moment because the schools have gotten back in. So there's a suite of measures being installed as part of the school mobility program. And first and foremost is the school zones. I'm not sure, did you have an opportunity, or any of you have an opportunity to see these, but it's basically literally pencil-like bollards going in outside schools and colourful delineation on the road surface to prevent vehicular drop-off congestion, so that the actual school itself, it's pretty obvious that it's a no-go zone for vehicles just literally outside the school. And what it does is it enables children to be able to travel actively to school, either walking or cycling safely, and prevents that vehicular congestion. And what we're doing with that school zone is that we're rolling out that program across Dublin City. We've already 60 plus applications for interest across the schools. So we've a very active program of delivery there, and we'll be hoping to deliver at least 4 a week on that going forward. And for some reason, there we go. And that's actually the pencil bollards up close. The Lord Mayor launched it there quite recently. That's the one on St. Francis Street. I certainly can't go without mentioning the dedicated business and communications teams that we've set up as part of this COVID mobility. So we have a very active business and communications team. They have a dedicated web page with regular updates. So we have monumental amount of photographs on that web page, and I'd really stress you to go look at some of the other suite of interventions that we have implemented. We have an active business liaison officer, because this is really important. As part of the COVID mobility packages, we're there to support businesses to optimize their use of their outdoor space and optimize their deliveries as well. So we're not forgetting them in the equation. We have a dedicated COVID mobility request form with phenomenal amount of engagement on that. We've over 3,800 requests so far, and they're broadly basic pedestrian areas, footpath widening, cycle interventions, a suite of measures. So there's a lot of engagement in the public and a lot of interest from the public on this. Almost finished, I promise. As part of the program, we're also very keen and very active in promoting active travel, which is walking and cycling. And as part of the program, we have identified 2 kilometre, 5 kilometre and 10 kilometre zones. And basically the message is that if you live within 10 kilometres of the city centre, to consider walking or cycling. We actually produced a video of this as well. I won't play it now because Conor will actually kill me. I'm taking so much time, but I'd stress you to have a look online at that because it's well worth looking at. That's a general one on COVID mobility during the COVID pandemic. And then I would like to say thank you and finally finish on a picture of one of the other initiatives that we're rolling out as part of the school's mobility, which is the Cycle Bus initiative. And that is actually a picture sent in very recently, and you can see the joy on their faces of those children as they're cycling to school, and that's Greenland's National School up in Clontarf. So there's a lot going on. We're very busy. I haven't said half the things I want to say. I'll ask you to go to the website to find out some more information, and thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you so much, Patricia. That was really comprehensive, and you did very well. It was like a speed dating there to get all the good stuff.
Very difficult. Yeah.
Yeah.
So much more to say.
No, there's a lot there, and even for someone like myself who's quite familiar with a lot of the interventions taking place, I think it's correct to say there's so much going on that one has to keep on the ball. And I guess a lot of people too are walking around Dublin and not realising it'd be good. The communications which are coming forth are excellent, because a lot of people don't realise that there is a huge plan, and that has been scrambled obviously since the 15th of March, basically. So thank you so much, Patricia. There are some great questions coming in, and please stay on, and we hope to go through them later on.
No problem.
Thank you. So we'll now invite Graeme McQueen, who is the Head of Communications for the Dublin Chamber of Commerce. And if you would like to give us your presentation now, Graeme, thank you. So we might get you to unmute there, please, Graeme.
Hi guys, sorry about that false start there. I'll just try that again. I shared my screen before unmuting myself, which was a bad move, obviously. So you might just give me a thumbs up, Conor. You can see those slides okay? Good stuff. So that's me. I'm Graeme McQueen. I'm Head of Communications in Dublin Chamber. I want to thank the guys for the invite to speak today. I'll give you a whistle-stop tour really of what the Chamber is about, what we're working on, and crucially why we're working on it. And then happy to take any questions at the end. Hopefully this will build on what Patricia has just presented there. And I'd probably start off just by commending Patricia and the team in Dublin City Council and all they've done over the last few months. I think you get a flavour there of the amount that's been done. And I think the old saying of never waste a good crisis certainly applies in the council. I think a lot of good stuff happening. So who are Dublin Chamber? For anybody who doesn't know us, we're a business organisation. We represent about 1,300 companies in the Dublin region, not just the city, but the whole region, and they employ somewhere around 300,000 staff. We represent all sectors as well. Sometimes people think of us as just a retail body, but we're absolutely not. We represent pretty much everyone and anyone from every sector, every size you can think of. There's a flavour of some of the names there. This is a piece of work that the Chamber kicked off in 2016, the Dublin 2050 project. We created this project mainly because we felt there was a lack of vision in terms of where Dublin was going. We felt that we were very much focused in the here and now. We were coming out of a very deep recession. People had been focusing on surviving basically for the best part of a decade, and we wanted to change the conversation basically. So we kicked off Dublin 2050. A lot of you will be familiar with the Great Dublin Survey that we ran in 2017. That's where we went out and we asked Dubliners some things about what they wanted for the city. We quite naively started that project by going to ask very prominent people in the city, high-ranking people in the council, for example, chief executives around the place, and we quite naively sat them down and said, what does Dublin 2050, what does a successful Dublin look like? And it was a question that they really couldn't answer, and I think quite fairly they couldn't answer because it's such a big question. So with the Great Dublin Survey, we posed a number of scenarios to people and said, what would you like the city to be? It could be like this, it could be like that, and we got them to react to that. And we soaked up a lot of feedback. We had about 20,000 responses, and this is a flavour really of what they told us, and this has really shaped the work of the Chamber over the past 4 years since. So in terms of what people want, you see it there. It's a Dublin that works. Quality of life has to be high. Crucially, transport has to work. It has to be a city that's easy to get around, that a city that's family friendly. Housing obviously came in very high, as it probably still would today, and sustainability came in as well. People want a sustainable Dublin, and I'll touch a bit more on that as we go through. We also went on a few study missions. Copenhagen was a big one for us. We took a group of our policy council. That's an elected council who oversee the Chamber's policy work. They're made up of a lot of different companies around the city, and we took them on these trips really to educate them, to show them what was possible, what could be brought back to Dublin, and it was really successful in changing our thinking. So you see there Copenhagen, Barcelona, Amsterdam, 3 cities that we've all been to as a chamber or individually to sort of soak up ideas and see what we could bring back. And that really changed the thinking of of the chamber. I think this is our current strategy, and this is our vision for Dublin. And I think it's quite a statement in term for a business organisation that quality of life is central to the way we view our role in shaping the city. And you see our mission there. We're still trying to help businesses succeed in a successful Dublin, but we recognise that a city that offers a high quality of life and economic vibrancy is going to be a successful city. If you compare that to where we were before, this is our previous strategy. This was before the Dublin 2050 work. Very business focused, very apt for the time. This was what businesses wanted from us from the time. Everything we do is a mirror of what our companies, our 1,300 members want. So, it's quite a contrast when you see it. So we see here, really what I'm trying to get across here is that the companies we represent, the businesses in Dublin, they want this quality of life aspect to come into Dublin. I think that's very important to build that picture. This kind of shows that I think what I'm trying to show here is just that the opinions of the chamber has changed a lot based on the member feedback over a long period of time. This was a piece I came across and was quite horrified to read it actually in 1997. Good old Frank McDonald, love him or hate him, came up with this piece in 1997. And you see here, Dublin Chamber was against the Lewis. And I thought that was incredible, because if you fast forward to 2017, 20 years later, here we are welcoming what was the extension of the Green Lines. It shows you how our opinion had changed from being against something to, saying it was great that it had been extended and how successful it is. Fast forward to the current year, and Dublin Chamber is leading the charge to get the Lewis out to other areas, the likes of Finglas and Lucan and Bray and places like that. So it just shows you how opinions change and how we try and move with the feedback that we get from our member companies. This was another turning point for the Chamber in 2018. To build on all this work, we invited Jan Gale to present at our annual dinner. For anyone who doesn't know that is our big showcase of the year. It's where we have 1,600 business people in the convention centre for a dinner. Normally, if you go back over the years, we've had people like Alan Sugar, Alex Ferguson talking about leadership and business and things like that. This was a big statement by the Chamber to have Jan Gale come over, kind of the godfather of future cities and, livability and things like that. So, and the reception he got was quite incredible. And I think everybody was quite wowed by what he had to say. And it's a lot of what we're talking about here today. So that was a big statement for us, and it all with the aim of building buy-in and progressing the conversation at a business level within the business community. We've been trying to push this agenda as a chamber, and it's, as a business organization, we traditionally probably have been known, probably quite fairly in some cases, as being pro-car and suit wearers and things like that. And those images are hard to shift. It takes a long time, especially because we have a media who loves the negative whenever something is announced. So they love headlines like this because obviously they get traction, and they love that sort of good bad scenario. So when we come out as a chamber and say that we're in favor of something like the Liffey Street pedestrianisation, they don't want to hear from us. They want to hear from this small group of maybe 3 retailers who get together under an umbrella, and they get their headline, and it creates this this media frenzy around that this is going to be bad for someone. It reminds me a bit of being back home with the football rivalry, this good bad. Obviously the good guys are the Celtic fans there in this instance, but I think it shows you that quite often the cycling agenda, for example, and the car lobby are pitched as, you know, complete opposites, and it's like this football rivalry. And I think it's very unhealthy. And I think as a chamber, we for a long time we struggled to shake the shackles off of that. We were seen as, how could Dublin Chamber, big bad business, possibly be in favour of things like cycling? But I think we've managed to change opinions as it goes along, although we still struggle at times to get the message out in media because they don't want to hear from us unless we're given out. And I can think of a number of journalists in town who wouldn't come to us anymore because we're not given out. And I've had journalists shout down the phone at me because, you know, you guys should be against this. But again, we're a reflection of the businesses in the city. So it's not that we just make this stuff up. We try and be the mirror for companies. So, you know, the advent of social media, and, you know, some media do take a very positive approach to all this, a very neutral approach. I think the Times did great work over the last couple of years and helping us get the message out there that the businesses are progressive in our thinking, and we are looking to make this a better city. And then things like social media, like we've used the Better Dublin hashtag. A lot of you will be familiar with that, to try and further the conversation, provoke discussion, but also promote a lot of the good things, the positive things, the things that could be better around the city. And we'll keep using that hashtag, and do get involved with it if you are on Twitter or any of the other platforms. So that's helped us to get our message out there. Another key one for us was when we joined up with the CYCLINGWORKS Dublin crew, and we got 90 companies from our membership to sign up to a charter which called for the implementation of the Dublin Cycle Network. That was a plan that had been sitting on the shelf for 5-6 years, and we wanted to see that brought to life. So we got all these companies to sign up to that charter. We put an email out to them. We didn't know what we were going to get. We said, we want to back this campaign. Would you sign the letter on behalf of your company? And you'll see there some pretty big, substantial employers in the city, the likes of Workday, Ervia, DIT, people like that, all want this to happen. You'll see on this slide as well, maybe it's the previous one, the likes of Google, Vodafone getting involved. So big employers, Facebook on there. It's a big statement again that businesses want this, and they want it because their staff want it. That's what they're hearing from staff. So this is one we launched last week. Again, give you a flavour of some of the work we're doing in the chamber. My colleague Marion worked very hard on this document. I think she's listening in, so I'll give her a shout out. This was one we pushed out. It's a 15-minute city whereby we've put forward a vision that for how Dublin can progress sort of post-COVID. It's got a really strong reaction so far. We're in the process of taking that to politicians and decision makers around the city to try and get this embedded into the city development plans, which will be revised over the coming months. So if you haven't seen that one, it's free to download from the Dublin Chamber website. So go on, have a look, and would welcome any feedback that you have on it. So we did some graphics there, as you'll see, took some pictures during lockdown of the quiet streets, and then we worked with a design company called Evolve to kind of reimagine how those streets might look like. And again, that's not us saying that's what Capel Street should look like. We're saying this is a possible example of how it could look in the future. What do you think? Get people to react to it. So some changes there, for example, to declutter the streets. We've put the street lights suspended from the buildings rather than coming up from poles on the street, something that we saw work very well in Copenhagen. So trying to further the conversation is what we're trying to do there. This is a flavour of what's in that 15-minute city document. Core to that is a good public transport network. We believe that if we're to have a 15-minute city, a city that works in terms of communities and things like that, it's got to be underpinned by a really good public transport network. We would see that as being public transport, cycling and walking, and there's also a role for things like e-scooters and things like that as well. We can pick into some of this in the Q&A if anyone has any questions. I mentioned sustainability earlier on.
Graeme, you're just on 12 minutes now, but continue, keep going. You're grand.
Great,
yeah,
I'm almost there. So this is sustainability is a big one for us this year. We're working with AIB on the Sustainability Academy, where we're trying to take companies on the journey to become more sustainable. And this is based on the feedback we got from people and from companies. If we're going to meet the carbon targets that we have as a country, as a city, then we need to take this seriously. So this is ingrained in the Chamber work at the moment, is trying to become a more sustainable city. And there's obviously a big role for transport in that, especially cycling and walking. This is another piece of work we did here, which shows that the importance of quality of life. We did a global reputation survey. Around 1,000 people living in Dublin, internationals who moved here from abroad. And you see here the city's main characteristics. This is where they view Dublin at the moment. And if you go way, way down, you'll see good quality of life there. Only 30% of people thought that Dublin ranks high for a good quality of life. And all the stuff you'd really want to be at the top are at the bottom. So it shows you the work that we need to do over the coming years to try and change things, become more family friendly and things like that. So where we're at now in terms of cycling and next steps, we've got cycling ingrained in all our transport policies. Any submission you see from us will have cycling in there. We're working with employers now to embrace and encourage cycling among staff. Also trying to help firms become more cycle-friendly employers. We'll have more coming out on that in the coming weeks and months. And we're pushing for the rollout at government level of new and improved infrastructure. So things like the Liffey cycle route. I'm going to skip past that one because I think Patricia covered that. Again, this is just our vision for making Dublin more walkable and friendly. You take a street like Nassau Street at the moment, you think back to 12 months ago, the number of tourists, people walking along that street. The road allocation there is completely out of sync given the levels of traffic we have going through it now. So we need to change the thinking. I think what we've seen, I mentioned earlier on, Patricia and her team have done some great work. We always call for a directly elected mayor in Dublin Chamber. We think we need a power to come in and get things done, but I think we've had a flavour of that over the last few months. COVID has really shown us that we can get things done quickly. We can test, we can trial, we can see how people react to certain changes. And I think that's something we would like to see continue. So bringing in car-free Sundays and things like that. Let's try it. Let's see how it works. Ultimately, what we're trying to do is create a city that works. If you go back to that picture I showed earlier on of the big divide between cars and everyone else, what we're trying to do really as a chamber, and I think it'll be a common agenda amongst the people here, is that we're trying to make a city that works for all. It's quite a scary image that as a Celtic fan to look at that. I'm not sure I'd ever really want to go that far, but what we're trying to do effectively is to make a city not just that works for one cohort of people, but that works for the internationals coming to live here, the locals, the cyclists, even the car motorist. There's a role for the car in the city, and it's how we all work together to make that happen. So we're looking forward to working continuously with the council and the other local authorities to make that happen, and to the other stakeholder groups that are here today. So I'm going to stop there. We'll pause for the Q&A, but if anybody wants me, I'm on the email or the Twitter machine there as well.
Great, thank you so much. I found that quite positive and uplifting, I must say. I've certainly been feeling very positive since the level 3 restrictions came in last Friday, but I think there's a bigger picture out there, and I think there's a lot of good stuff to focus on to get us through these times. So thank you so much, and thank you, Patricia, as well. I'll go to the questions that are coming up. There's some great questions. I'm going to go to my little tip sheet here, and maybe I'll sort of go backwards. I think one thing I was objectively looking at was the Dublin Chamber of Commerce has particularly positive and strong communications because after all, that is your job. You are Director of Communications, and the Chamber of Commerce is to communicate what they want and what they want done. One of the questions coming up was, can we talk about, I might give this to Patricia, can we talk about the communications strategy surrounding COVID interventions? So
absolutely,
we've come to some very positive, like for example, the promotion engagement with the pedestrian street trials this summer was really good and really positive. But then some things like the recent Strand Road proposal last week seemed to be a bit disjointed and a bit confusing. So my question coming from the floor would be, what sort of defined communication strategy do you have, and how has that evolved as the crisis has unfolded? Thank you, Patricia.
No problem at all. And you're absolutely right. These things evolve. And what we've noticed since the bomb of the COVID pandemic is that everything we do is fast changing, rapid, adapt, review, change. So that's kind of the model we've been applying. So from the get-go, just in terms of communications, we have been very, very active. And we have weekly updates that we put on the webpage of any of the interventions that have happened, including photographs, etc. We're open for business in terms of Twitter, the dedicated email, the dedicated COVID request form. And then in terms of actual consultation in terms of measures that may be rolled out, that has also evolved. So at the very start, during the really the heat of the initial crisis, you know, we had to act rapidly, and we did a lot of measures to maximize the available space for pedestrians and cyclists. Now we're kind of bedding down into a sort of a medium term. The initial sort of COVID bomb has settled in. We're almost learning to live with COVID, let's face it, all of us. So we're adapting our approach. And what we've done for the last number of interventions is that we've uploaded the proposals to the consultation hub, and we are seeking the feedback of the citizens that may or may not be affected, almost really to flag up issues, because if I've learned anything over the last few months is, you know, if we were to build a city from scratch somewhere, right, oh my, would it be so different to what we have right now. So you obviously you delineate space for everything, the walkers, the cyclists, the deliveries, you know, you name it, you'd factor it in. But what we're dealing with here is the city is nearly 1,000 years old, and we're trying to retrofit a little bit of everything. So it's not just about cycling, and it's not just about walking. We have to support the businesses. We have to help them in any way we can, because they've been annihilated with this COVID. We have to facilitate deliveries. We have to facilitate the city actually getting back to work. And so there are many parts to the puzzle, and everybody has their own hat in them. And what's difficult for us to navigate, but we have to do it because it's our jobs, is to wear multiple hats and try and get street by street a best solution. You've also got, as I identified in my presentation, we've the public transport. So we have to ensure that the buses run, that they run in a timely manner, that they've got the space to run, because pre-COVID, 50% of all citizens of Dublin travelled by bus, so we can't ignore that. We've got the cycling community, the walking community, the businesses, the retailers, you name it, we've got it. We have to factor it in. It's a complicated area, and as we go along, we have adapted, as I say, and we're using the consultation hub to good effect to seek flags and feedback quite quickly, because that's what we're moving in. We're moving very quickly to install measures. They're temporary measures, and they've to be installed rapidly and quickly, just like the pandemic itself. So we're almost moving as quickly as the pandemic in a way, in different waves. So there's different phases to the program, and right now we are using the consultation hub because we've moved into this medium-term phase, and obviously we're sending weekly updates as well to the elected members, because obviously they play a part in all of this as well, and they're very important. So they do get the weekly updates. So it's all part of the package, and it's a complex package, but it doesn't mean that we shy away from it, and we do try and get the best. I'll stop talking now, yes.
Thank you, Patricia. That was very comprehensive answer, thank you.
I'll just add, sorry, I just shared the link to the consultation hub just in the chat if anyone wants to see it.
Yeah.
So they can
Thanks,
see it.
Conor.
Thanks, Patricia.
I suppose I might put this to Graeme. You had big long-term strategies there, and you know, in a way, Patricia's coming in with the quick fix and now the medium-term stage. And now I think everyone realizes that we're entering medium to long-term phase. And what would the Dublin Chamber of Commerce like to see more from the council in terms of communication, either with themselves or with people in the city, so that we don't hit all these roadblocks? We seem to hit literally some louder voices out there, some protected lobby groups perhaps, or seem to be able to put, as you were saying earlier on, Graeme, the negative spin on measures which, if people stand back and look at, are ultimately going to benefit anybody. Because if our public transport works, and if our active travel works, the people who have to drive for whatever reason, they will have an easier journey too. You know, it's win-win for everyone.
I think the big thing is we need to keep working together. As I showed there, we represent a wide-ranging number of companies. They come at things from a very different space at times. Like, we still have some companies who would be very old school in their thinking. We have lost some companies recently because of the stance we would have on things like livability and cycling and things like that. That's just a fact. We've tried to take them on an education journey to let them know why we think this is a good idea and show them international best practice. But often those companies are just very entrenched in their attitudes and things like that, so we can't change minds. Often though, when those companies do choose to go out and speak, I think the council can focus on the negative voices that come there. We try and take a very considered approach to that. So the message from us would really be to keep working together. I think we've done that well between the business community over the last few months through COVID. I think they've reacted very well in terms of, they got the pedestrianizations out quickly, they extended them quickly. I think we would have liked to have seen them continue through September, but that wasn't possible, which is unfortunate, especially where you see where we are now in terms of the 3-week lockdown that we're faced with. But I think it's keep working with the businesses to get more outdoor seating and things like that. The big concern for us over the coming months is probably commercial rates. It's a bit of a sideway conversation, but you see last night the elected councillors decided that they weren't going to install the full local property tax take. We're going to be 15% down again, so that's a big hole in the budget. We'd have a big fear that they're going to try and recoup that from the business community through commercial rates. We think that would be really bad news for a lot of companies in the city, and would be maybe a step too far for some of them, and would tip some of them over the edge. So they'd be some of the things.
Okay, Graeme. There's a few similar comments coming in, and a lot of them relate to queries about where we are now and our sort of reactive stage of dealing with this crisis, and the more longer term integration into existing plans and infrastructural improvements that were planned. For example, where bus corridor is still happening, bus connects rather, sorry, with our bus corridors and our greater Dublin area cycling network, the greenways. There are so many things there. Are these going to suffer as a result of this, where we're at now with this, or are these going to integrate eventually into what we're doing now? I might ask Patricia that question.
Oh, thanks, Conor. So basically, the cycling, the more longer term projects, such as the cycling projects, what were the other ones you mentioned, sorry?
Well, for example, bus connects.
Oh, bus connects.
Integrating our the greenways, the Daughter Greenway. The road.
Yes. So all of those, you're perfectly right to flag them, and it is important to see that they sit right next to. So I mean, we're all busy right at the moment reacting to the COVID crisis and trying to optimize mobility while ensuring social distancing. That's not going to go away anytime soon. I mean, we're really talking about another year at least, as far as I can see, on that alone. But side by side with that, we are also progressing our cycle projects initiatives. And indeed, there is a third strand to this, the government stimulus package. So the NTA have approved a list, which is available on their website, of a suite of projects across the country, basically, and including in the Dublin area, with walking and cycling enhancements at their very core. So we're busy progressing on that front as well. So really, we're almost, fighting on. I don't mean fighting because that sounds negative. So we're progressing on all fronts, if you like. But right now, in front of me, because that's obviously I'm charged with delivering the COVID mobility program. That's the one that's taking a lot of my energy and my team's energy. But side by side with that, we have teams working on the cycling projects and teams working on the government stimulus package. So absolutely, we're all sort of integrated and all leading in the same direction, a bit like what Graeme mentioned earlier, to create a more livable city. But we can't ignore the realities of the fact that we are in a city that is not being built from scratch, and space, if nothing, COVID has taught us that space is a premium and curbside space is a premium. So, I mean, we're all in that. Every citizen, whether you work in COVID mobility or not, suddenly and how we sort of divvy out that space in a clever fashion, you know.
Thank you, Patricia. I used to watch a lot of Star Trek, and it begins with space, the final frontier. So I agree with you, yeah, completely. I suppose talking about space and urban space, Graeme, some of the questions are coming in of that we want to make Dublin a livable place. We clearly mightn't need as much office space and unfortunately some retail space. I'm thinking of some cities that I've visited that I love, like Amsterdam, Brighton, Southeast England, where there's just such a vibrancy on the streets because people live above retail units. Offices don't seem to dominate and choke the approaches to a lot of the inner city. And there is another question that's come up integrated with this, is that we've built some fabulous infrastructure, but what are we doing about, we need some enforcement. The city now is a bit spooky, it's empty. Do we have enough resources from the Garda to enforce either the access to the city with these new wonderful cycle lanes and stop parking in them? And do we have enough reassurance to people to feel that they're safe living in the cities? We saw an event this weekend which scared a lot of inner city residents and seemed to have a delayed response. I don't know. What does Graeme think about those factors?
Yeah, I think you're right. I think they do go hand in hand. A core part of our new 15-minute city document is that you create sort of mixed-use, very vibrant communities. We saw that really strongly in Copenhagen, where I think if you look at somewhere like the IFSC, they've built those buildings to have a Monday to Friday 9 to 5 lifespan. And if you go down there on a Saturday or a Sunday in normal times, you see that there's not many people around, and the businesses there are set up for midweek and things like that. So we want to see that change. We would see every area of Dublin being somewhere that you live, somewhere that you work. So we'd like to see that ingrained in the planning process. I think it can work. I think we've seen it in the lockdown. If you walk down Henry Street or Parnell Street, there was more people around than there would have been on the south side of the city because we've got more people living in those areas. So that's something we need to look at. Above the shop living and things like that are topics that need to come back on the agenda. In terms of making the city safer, in terms of cutting down on sort of rogue behaviour, be it just societal issues, or be it transport or cars parking on pavements. All that stuff went on previously. It's probably not happening anymore at the moment. It's just we see more of it because there's less other activity going on to disguise it. So those are issues that we've been talking about for a long time to the guards and things like that. Resources is a big issue. We do need to make sure that Dublin is adequately resourced. And in terms of why it's important, the reputation study that I mentioned that the Chamber did last year highlighted the fact that Dublin isn't viewed as safe as what we might think it is. A lot of internationals living in Dublin don't feel as safe as we would like them to. So that's definitely something we need to look at. But more city living, more the nighttime economy is something that we need to look at as well. There's lots of developments happening, like the redevelopment of Cleary's, the work that's going on the Carlton Cinema site, the fruit and veg markets. These are all things that projects that could elevate Dublin and make it more vibrant and give it that lifespan outside of the 9 to 5. So if we can look at all these areas individually and get more people living in the city, then that can help. But we also need to look at the Garda resourcing, and enforcement needs to improve as well. We need to look at smart technologies for bus lanes and parking in the wrong areas and sort of rogue behaviour. And we do need to see a clampdown on that, I think.
Okay, thank you. We're coming up to the last segment, but there's another question that is slightly overlapping a few, so I might raise that, and I'll give this one to Patricia, please. I had the luxury of being underemployed yesterday afternoon, so I took advantage and hopped on my bike from Rathmines and went out the wonderful Sea Point stretch through Dún Laoghaire County Council's jurisdiction and had a lovely swim at high tide. But I can't believe how successful and how, okay, it's on the coast, but that whole integrated Blackrock out to Sandy Cove and beyond now is just fantastic. It's a destination. It's a tricky bit to get from Rathmines safely across through Bowles Bridge at the moment. But I guess that my summary of the questions coming in is, this seems to have been a trial that was just rolled out and quite quickly. What is Dublin City's council's approach to just rolling out some trials? Like Strand Road became a huge issue last week. Why don't we just tell people that these are trials, and the word trial means that. Let's have a look at it. Let's see what happens, rather than get mired down in consultation processes before we actually know what the result would look like.
Okay, so I suppose it is a complex area because, you know, what we've learned is, and what I've learned in the last few months is that when you go out into the urban realm and make any change at all, everybody has a view and everybody has an opinion. So you may recall that I was mentioning earlier that initially we obviously, at the height of that initial pandemic, went out and carried out some measures quite quickly, quite rapidly, as a direct response to the emergency measures. We're now in the medium phase, and we are running a series of trials, and we are engaging with the local residents and with the businesses, the retailers, and also the elected members, because it's very important that everybody is aware of what's being proposed, and it's also very important to get what issues that may arise, to have them flagged so they can be incorporated into the design. So what we've done in this more medium stage is that we have set up the proposals on the consultation hub for various suite of measures that are coming down the track, and asking for the various local issues or you know, issues that we may not be aware of to be flagged. And there's no better people to flag those than the people who are living in the community, or maybe the councillors in the area that are representing the community. So that's a very important exercise. So they would, you know, that is something that has benefited the design, and because there are situations where there are specific issues that have to be accommodated, be it bus lanes, schools, you know, deliveries, there's loading bays that have to be accommodated. It's a complex area. The benefit of the consultation is identifying some of the issues and then factoring and ameliorating them as much as possible in the design. So I think that's the way we're going forward for now, certainly. The benefit of a trial, and we've had some very successful trials even pre-COVID with Suffolk Street, if you'll recall, is what a trial does is it gives you an opportunity to see, just to actually, it's a live experiment in a way, you could say, and you can see, well, there it is. Let's see. Well, what is the reality of the traffic counts? What is the reality of, you know, the different issues? It's a very, it's a good way of becoming aware on the ground, almost as I say, like a live experiment of what the key issues may be. So certainly I see huge benefits in the trial, be it pre-COVID or post-COVID, because it gives people an opportunity. People hate change. That's, you know, and so basically trials is an opportunity to see, well, okay, I thought this was going to happen, but now look, the trial is up and running, and that fear hasn't happened. So it's a very good way of minimizing those fears and making something a reality, and maybe exhibiting that it's not all bad and that some of your fears are maybe ungrounded, you know. So I do see value in trial.
Okay. Thank you, Patricia. And you, the council, generally would welcome interaction and you know, the public or anyone on this webinar.
Absolutely, and exactly. We have a live and dedicated email address, and we also have a dedicated request form and a web page that weekly updates, if not bi-weekly updates. Plenty of photos, so you can knock yourselves out and see some of the work that we've been doing under extremely difficult circumstances over the last 5 months in a rapidly changing situation.
I think you've done remarkably well, and I think generally most people the nearly 100 people who've shown up today have shown that there's such goodwill towards what the council are doing, and there's such goodwill towards Graeme's organisation and seeing our lovely city get up and running again. And I suppose the thing we should say, probably Graeme and Patricia, is tell people here, don't shop online. Get in, get on your bike, get on the bus, get into town, buy something, buy a cup of coffee, go shopping. We're not going to achieve anything by sitting there, you know, online. We need to make the city alive.
100%. Yep.
have to wrap it up there, but I'm very grateful for your time today, Patricia, Graeme, and I'm feeling a lot more positive about things a few days ago. So I'm going to keep that with me, and the sun is coming out.